In part two, we're going to look at how the 6 levels match up with some of the other books and authors and theories that are out there and show how they all fit together and make sense and how they're quite helpful. In Peter Senge's book, The Fifth Discipline, he talks about mental models. One of his examples are the mental models of quality. He had 5 mental models that were a progression, and they mapped in very well with the 6 levels from Hayes if you treat the first 2 levels together. The first one was the status quo model, where we hire good people and we have competitive products. I guess we could characterize that another way, and that would be, if you don't do your job, you're fired. The third level, the strategy level, matched up with the quality control level. We have 100% inspection, and we send only good products to our customers. Here again, the emphasis is on inspection, not necessarily on producing good products to begin with. Level 4, we begin to see an orientation toward the customer. In fact, a very nice alignment. Here we would say something like this. We have an 800 number and correct problems right away. The idea is we're trying to be responsive to our customers, but again, the emphasis is not on getting it right the first time. Level 5 is process improvement. We use SPC and teams to constantly improve how we operate. This is a very nice alignment with level 5. And finally, the total quality level matches up very well with level 6 from Hayes. I've been teaching statistical process control for over 20 years, and I believe there's a strong alignment between the practice of SPC and the 6 levels. I personally don't think that SPC is appropriate for the first 2 levels. At that point, I think you just have too many out of control conditions that you wouldn't want to be charting them. You would just be wanting to work on getting rid of the low-hanging fruit. Levels 3 and 4, I think, benefit from SPC in that you're trying to identify the assignable causes, and at this point, with early stages of teamwork, you're putting together teams to help improve your processes and control assignable causes. But finally, the higher levels, 5 and 6, this is where you would begin to reduce the common cause variation using design of experiments or other techniques, and also designing processes so that they don't have a lot of variation. So I see a nice parallel between the actual use of SPC and where you are in the 6 levels. I was at a conference several years ago on Six Sigma, and I saw this information being presented. It was a woman explaining how her company had integrated Lean and Six Sigma, and she aligned it with the 6 Sigma levels of quality themselves. I thought that was kind of interesting, kind of wished I had thought of that. I'm not going to talk much about those percentages, but I just want to point out that when you have early in your journey lots of scrap, waste, reworks, a lot of bottlenecks, that's when you can use the lean tools, things like theory of constraints, Kaizen, to get big returns. And then as you move up in your levels of quality, then you begin to use the more sophisticated tools, and I would put Six Sigma in that category. If you analyze the various standards and systems that are out there, I think we can categorize them into those that are involved with documentation, planning, and reporting information as ones that would fall and align with the strategy category, whereas the ones that embody and include continuous improvement, like QS 9000 did, like the 9100s, like the ISO 9001-2004 standard, those with a continuous improvement component, I believe, align better with levels 4, 5, and 6. In Colin's book, Good to Great, he did some research and he found 5 stages that a company goes through in the Good to Great process. I'm not going to go through these 6 levels in detail, but let me point out in the column that has build up and breakthrough that he characterized the first 3 levels as pretty much getting people ready for transitioning into a performance level. And then breakthrough would be the last 3 levels. I find that to be a very strong parallel to what I'm going to be talking about. I highly encourage you to read this book if you've never read it. It's really a fast read and it's very useful. I think we're getting to a point where we can start to tie what we've talked about so far together by using leadership as a platform for doing it. I believe that the first 3 levels, if you look closely at what's going on in companies during those 3 levels, we have what I would characterize as transactional leadership. What is transactional leadership? It's work-centric and hierarchical in nature. The transaction comes from the idea that we have a transaction going on. I do some work and you pay me for it. Do the work, get paid. The focus is work. If you do your work, you get paid. How do you do your work? What your work is, getting trained to do your work. That's the focus. If you do your work good enough, you get promoted, and then you help show other people how to do their work. This is a transactional culture, and transactional leadership is focused on getting people to do their work and keeping the chain of command intact. Compare that to the transformational leadership model, which is what levels 4, 5, and 6 are about. Here the focus is not so much each person's individual work, but it's getting the system working right. If the system works right, then people's work will be more effective. How do we work on the system, though, as individuals? It's pretty tough. We have to do it by getting people together in teams or working across department boundaries to work on the system. Everybody knows a little bit about the system, and by working together and improving the system, then we have more success and better quality. Here we have a slide much like the last one, but with a slightly different spin. We see here Frederick Taylor in Scientific Management embodies the transactional leadership model, with the focus being on work and how it's done, and the values being centered around people doing their work and trying to do their work right. The transformational leadership model, which characterizes the 4th, 5th, and 6th levels, embody what Deming was all about in Senge and others, where the emphasis and the value is not so much on me and my work, but on us and our system and what we're doing to make the system better. So systems thinking, team learning, and the culture change that it takes to permeate those values throughout the workforce is what transformational leadership is all about. By now, I think you can see that there's a definite theme and a pattern to where we're going. We're showing that levels 1, 2, and 3 represent a transactional culture where the emphasis is on individuals and on their work and controlling that. Levels 4, 5, and 6 represent a transformational culture where the emphasis is on improving the system and creating teamwork and values that align with improving the system. Also at this level, we find an interest and investment in innovation and creativity. Let me ask you a question at this point. If you look at your current work, whatever you're doing now, which one of these levels would represent your organization? And maybe if you've worked at other places, when you left there, what levels would represent the organization that you were in. I know that when I worked at General Motors, we were definitely in the transactional leadership culture, probably at level 3. We definitely were not in any kind of a quality feedback or system thinking mode. So anyway, this is a useful model to kind of figure out, okay, where am I now? And then where do I want to go? I almost didn't put this slide in. It refers to a book by McGregor that was published, about 40 years ago. And he talked about Theory X and Theory Y.
Theory Y.
Managers believed that people basically like to work, and if you gave them the right environment, they would do a good job.
Theory X.
Managers believed that basically people were lazy, so you need to stay on top of them and make sure that they're working. In my opinion, these were both theories that fell into the transactional culture camp. It's just two different views about people and their work. Along came Uchi, who wrote a book called Theory Z, which was about the participative style of management, which I believe aligns with the transformational culture. So for those of you that remember the Theory X and Theory Y and Theory Z days, I just wanted to show that this model works very well in trying to explain what they were writing about. One of my favorite books is Six Thinking Hats by Bono. In his book, he talks about taking the time to look at a situation from a number of different vantage points, and so he refers to those as the 6 different colors of hats. The first 3, the white hat, red hat, and black hat, I think align pretty well with our traditional transactional cultures. The white hat person is the one that looks at all the facts and features. The red hat person is the one whose feelings kind of drive them, and intuition plays a large role in how they think. By the way, we're not saying that's bad, it's just that it has a place. And the black hat person is the one that says, okay, let's be cautious, let's look for the downside and the risks. I believe that transactional cultures are dominated by these 3 hats. In the transformational culture, I think we see the first 3 hats, plus we see 3 more hats that Bono talked about. The yellow hat is where we look for what the positive and constructive side of proposals and ideas and situations are. The green hat, which is creativity, where we're looking for alternatives and how to make things work. And then finally, the blue hat is where you step back and you say, how have we been thinking about this? Maybe that's wrong, or maybe that's right. So these 3 hats I feel align well with the transformational culture, and I particularly think the blue hat does fit in with level 6. But anyway, even though I don't align the 6 hats with the 6 levels, I do think they group well in the fashion shown here. I really recommend you read the book, and I will be talking more about that later. I want to wrap up part 2 with the topic of the wall, the transition from level 3 to 4. I think this is where the hard part is in the transition up through the stages. I believe also this is the reason why so many of the TQM efforts failed in the past. To go from level 3 to level 4, you have to start to make culture change. From a traditional hierarchical culture way of thinking things, to empowering people, to teamwork, and looking at work as projects. Also, go from a less problem solving and more problem prevention mode, less firefighting and more problem prevention, and also more innovation and creativity. A lot of values have to change. One of those is people have to have a willingness to learn new things, learn things from other people, plus be willing to share what they're doing. It also requires system thinking, looking at the big picture, how things interrelate, and being willing to break down barriers and talk to people about their parts of the system and how you can work together better. Anyway, a lot of the rest of this will be devoted to how to implement this culture change and more information on the transitions. I almost didn't put this slide in. It refers to a book by McGregor that was published, about 40 years ago. And he talked about Theory X and Theory Y. Theory X managers believed that people basically like to work, and if you gave them the right environment, they would do a good job. Theory Y managers believed that basically people were lazy, so you need to stay on top of them and make sure that they're working. Gave them the right environment, they would do a good job. You gave them the right environment, they would do a good job. Managers believed that people based X and Theory Y. Theory X and he talked about Theory X and Theory Y. Theory X managers Y. Theory X